As I'm sure you're all aware by now, Warhammer 40k is filled with some absolutely terrifying aliens and monsters, some a lot more common than others. Now, the galaxy is a really big place, and there are tons of examples of bizarre, twisted, and terrifying nightmare creatures that lurk on the planets we don't get to visit very often in the story. From crazy alien meat balloons that devour their prey in the worst way imaginable, crazed fiends that get stronger and more vicious the more injured they get, and some cute peace-loving space whales that unfortunately got corrupted into demonic undead spaceships. It's time for more obscure aliens and monsters from Warhammer 40k. I love covering the weird stuff that people don't tend to make videos on. So if you like when I make content like this, let me know by clicking the like and subscribe button, and tell me the topics that you'd like to see me cover down in the comment section below. I read every single one of your comments, even the mean ones. It's a compulsion, I can't help myself. Before we get started, a quick shout out to this video's sponsor, and then we're gonna dive headfirst into the grimdark.
I want to tell you about AG1, the sponsor of this video. AG1 by Athletic Greens is a nutritional supplement that helps with immune support, energy, recovery, and focus. It combines 9 different health products into a single, easy-to-drink powder that all work together as one, replacing things like multivitamins, multiminerals, pre- and probiotics, immune support, and more. This means it does more for your body while saving you time, money, and confusion when looking at the thousands of different products available on the market today. AG1 is certified by NSF, which is a really big deal and means that you can trust what's on the label is exactly what you're putting into your body, and is something I definitely really appreciate considering just how many supplements are out there that are filled with a bunch of nonsense. I'll freely admit, my diet has kind of gotten all over the place since I started working on YouTube content full time, and I wanted a supplement that made sure I got all of the healthy vitamins and minerals I needed, no matter how hectic my schedule got, and wasn't gonna force me to take a whole bunch of different pills, as I've always been someone that struggles with forming habits. It's super easy to remember my AG1, 1 scoop, 1 minute every day. I've been drinking it for about a month now. First thing I do when I get to the studio every day, and I've definitely noticed a pretty big boost in my energy and ability to focus. I also like to mix it with a little bit of their vitamin D3K2. It tastes great and kind of reminds me of vanilla and coconuts. They're offering my viewers a 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D3K2 and 5 travel packs free with your first purchase. So click on the link in the description below to get started today. Big thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this video. Number 5. The Clawed Fiends. The Clawed Fiends have a savage reputation of very quickly becoming a planet's apex predator in a very short period of time, no matter the environment that they find themselves in. They do this by wiping out any other predators that would challenge their rule. They are a bizarre creature that seem to be an amalgamation of different predatory traits. They can grow to be quite large, and their body is almost completely comprised of bands of corded muscle. They are tremendously strong, and each of the claws on their elongated arms are said to be as sharp as an imperial monoblade. Their bodies are covered in thick leathery skin that offers substantial protection, and their multiple eyes are even said to be able to perceive several different spectrums at once. They also have incredible hearing, and their ears are able to pick up on even the slightest of sounds in any environment. Now, field reports from the beast houses that observe their hunting patterns indicate that they prefer moving targets, kicked up into a frenzy by anything that would attempt to flee from them or at least fight back. But their vision is not solely based on movement like some researchers used to believe, and attempts by these very same individuals to trick them by standing still have ended disastrously. They are absolute killing machines and are able to slice through armor or cleave a man's head from his body with a single swipe. Now, perhaps one of their most interesting traits is their ability to get stronger and faster the more wounds they sustain. It's almost like the scent of their own blood drives them into a killing frenzy. Now, there are skeptics who have hand-waved this behavior as a natural phenomenon, that any creature would logically fight back even harder after sustaining injuries from a predator. But many more have pointed out that no other species has demonstrated this behavior to such extreme and dangerous levels. Because of this, the Fiends have been a highly sought-after combatant for the Comoran arenas in Dark Eldar society, and are one of the preferred species tamed by their beastmasters. Capturing a Clawed Fiend alive is no easy task, as they are rumored to be strong enough to rip through even the sealed bulkheads of ships. Their origins remain something of a mystery, and they don't seem intelligent enough to strive for technology or civilization. They seem to only exist to kill anything that gets in their way. Miraculously though, they don't seem to be limited to a single planet. Far from it, they've been found throughout the entirety of the Coronis expanse. How such a thing is even possible for a species that's not intelligent enough to create their own void ships has led to a few interesting theories. The first is that their spread was simply due to an accident. Ships responsible for transporting them to the carnivariums for study simply lost control of the beasts and they escaped into the wilderness. Well, others believe that their spread was intentional, designed by a different xeno species that had a malevolent intent. Now, due to their hyper-aggressive nature and their ability to quickly repopulate wherever they show up, they're able to decimate entire populations of local species in a relatively short period of time. So the theory holds weight, but why somebody would do this still remains a mystery. The third and most bizarre theory states that the Fiends are somehow psychically attuned to the Immaterium, and thus are capable of tearing a hole in reality in order to spread across the stars themselves. Although many studies have been conducted on the Fiends, this behavior has never been directly observed, and thus remains just a theory, as no self-respecting biologist of the Adeptus Mechanicus would give such a nonsensical idea any credence without direct quantifiable data. It is said there are a handful of individuals who know the true nature of the Fiends, inquisitors, xenozoologists, and senior rogue traders that are on a need-to-know basis. Any of this information, though, has yet to be disclosed, and it makes you wonder what they're trying to cover up. Number 4. The Creeping Stalker. On the frozen world of Lucien's Breath, life has evolved in a particularly fascinating way in order to adapt to its insanely low temperatures. Now, most creatures that call the planet home have had their metabolisms reduced by a ridiculous degree in order to conserve as much energy as possible. The creature known as the Creeping Stalker is the noted apex predator of this world. And with such a lofty title also comes the secondary title of being one of the fastest creatures that call the planet's frozen wastes its hunting grounds. Said to be able to reach a blisteringly fast maximum speed of nearly a meter per hour. I know that doesn't sound like much, but that's terrifyingly fast compared to all the other animals that live here. Its slow speed combined with its near-perfect camouflage and the ability to completely silently creep up on its prey has led many miners to, in a moment of distraction, be taken completely unaware by what they assume to be just another patch of snow. A stalker's hide is mostly translucent, and despite seeming somewhat fragile, their bodies are comprised of a particularly tough material. They do not have any type of skeletal system in which to speak of, and thus their bodies are able to expand exponentially in order to accommodate particularly large meals. The only hard part of their anatomy are the rigid rings of serrated teeth set inside its jawless mouth. They also sport 4 long whip-like tentacles that aid the creature in dragging anything it comes into contact with down into its gullet. The stalker will hide and wait for its prey for days on end, staying completely still in order to conserve as much energy as possible. They are able to detect the approach of prey through the faint electrical fields generated by all living creatures. Considering that human beings that are not native to this world have much faster metabolisms to the native wildlife, even the most out of shape of people would be considered a professional athlete in comparison. The electrical fields that we give off are way more intense, and thus make us absolutely irresistible to the stalkers. Now, once the prey has been located, the stalker will move into position until it's ready to strike. When the moment is at hand, it will burst forward in a lightning-fast manner, consuming decades worth of stored energy in a matter of moments. Its tentacles lashing out to ensnare its prey and drag them kicking and screaming into its mouth, where it secretes acidic enzymes to absorb its meal's nutrients as quickly as possible. After the prey has been swallowed, it can take nearly a month to be completely digested. Most stalkers are roughly 2 to 3 meters in length, making them the perfect size to attack a human being. But considering the fact that they never stop growing, there have been reports of stalkers that are far larger. Some reports indicate that there are particularly gigantic stalkers out in the wastes that have managed to swallow entire vehicles whole. Now, one would assume that the stalker, being so well suited to its particularly freezing environment, would not be able to survive off-world, but there have been reports of disturbingly similar creatures being found across the cosmos. Having adapted to living in much warmer environments like predator-infested jungles, the underhives of a hive city, or in a few documented reports, the lower decks of a void ship. Experts are not sure if these are completely different species, or if the creeping stalker has managed to evolve in a relatively short period of time. And more disturbingly is the theory that these variations are due to some form of artificial evolution, engineered by an unknown benefactor. Why a person would do such a thing still remains a mystery. Number 3. The Thornmaw. The Thornmaw is possibly one of the most bizarre-looking entities on this list. They're comprised of a teardrop-shaped body that seems like it's lacking any kind of skin, instead resembling an amalgamation of exposed muscle and sinew. Its body also sports a whole host of chitinous spikes and spines that get larger and thicker the further up the body you go. In a bizarre and disturbing fashion, the highest spikes are often adorned with a grotesque assortment of trophies from its victims, normally taking the form of dangling impaled skeletons and corpses, creating a carrion crown for the floating hunter. At the bottom half of its body is a huge dripping mouth, filled with row upon row of grinding teeth and clusters of armored talons that the Thornmaw uses to snatch up its prey and deliver them into its hungry maw. At first glance, documented sightings of Thornmaws is actually surprisingly rare, but their nature as an apex predator that relies on ambush tactics doesn't leave many survivors to document the experience. The documented reports that we do have state that they are often dismissed by ignorant adventurers as just some form of harmless, albeit strange-looking native wildlife, an alien meat balloon-like creature that seems to hover around aimlessly. The individuals that lived long enough to make these reports are incredibly lucky, as once prey is spotted, the Thornmaw will pursue them indefinitely, hanging just out of sight, normally attacking from above when the prey is distracted, in a swooping dive. In other instances, they will disguise themselves in a jungle canopy, or in the rafters of a void ship, waiting for prey to unexpectedly walk beneath them before leaping out of hiding, snatching them up, and dragging them back into the safety of their hideaway, where, in a particularly grotesque manner, they will flense away the skin of their meal before devouring them bite by grinding bite. Some reports indicate that the Thornmaws will often dismember their victims by slowly snipping away limbs bit by bit, before eventually going in for the final kill. This terrifying display is unnatural for such a predator, who under normal circumstances would be expected to try to kill their prey as quickly as possible to limit any damage to itself. This has led many to speculate that the Thornmaws are able to not just feed off of a victim's body, but also psychically feed off the terror and agony it generates in its prey. Adult Thornmaws can reach a particularly large size, and their seemingly excessive number of talons makes them a threat to not just the individual who would wander off, but also to small groups as well. Although encounters with these creatures are rare, most of their documented sightings are located in a pretty obvious pattern amongst prevalent regions of calm warp tides. This fact, combined with the vast distance between each of these locations, have led to rumors that the Thornmaws are able to access hidden passageways throughout the webway in order to travel throughout the void. There was one particularly terrifying report of Thornmaws infiltrating a freighter known as the Light of Calixis, where a handful of them were able to devour nearly the entire crew. A few survivors managed to escape in a single savior pod, and their rescuers were told wild tales of dangling arms from the rafters that would snatch up bodies and rip them apart, and terrible mouths that could bite through a skull with incredible ease. Number 2. Void Krakens. Out of all of the horrifying things that lurk in the dark places between stars within the Cronus expanse, possibly none inspire quite as many terrifying tales as those of the Void Krakens, one of the largest and most dangerous predators that have ever been documented. These things are incredibly rare, and due to differing accounts of their appearance and hunting habits, it may be indicative that each of these encounters was dealing with a different subspecies. Void Krakens are impossibly massive, with tentacles that can measure multiple miles in length. They tend to have a particular fondness for reaching out from the void, snatching up ships that enter their feeding grounds, and devouring them whole. For obvious reasons, attempts to study them in the wild have mostly turned disastrous. The information that we do have on them states that Void Krakens are solitary asexual creatures that reproduce by dividing themselves much in a similar way to that of amoebas, just on a much larger scale. When it comes time to reproduce, the Kraken will tear a piece of itself off and fling it at a new world, its preferred breeding ground being that of a planet or planetoid that is airless and devoid of life. This hatchling will then burrow into the planet's surface and feed off of its rocks and mineral deposits for decades or even centuries at a time, until it fully develops into a Kraken in its own right. The creature will then fling itself into space, where it will continue to feed and grow much, much larger. Void Krakens will normally attempt to place their young on planetoids with low gravity, which makes the process of flinging themselves back into space a lot easier for the young. But in a pinch, they'll chuck it at whatever's available. It's because they subsist solely off the minerals found in rocks that explains their obsession with Imperial void ships, as a ship represents a concentration of these trace minerals in a great abundance, making their metal hulls almost irresistible. Particularly large ships that are loaded with a huge arsenal of weaponry can put up enough of a fight to make a Void Kraken think twice, but the reality is, these ships are pretty rare, and smaller vessels often do not have the firepower necessary in order to fight back. Even more distressing is the fact that normally when a crew realizes those rocky crags they're seeing out of their windows are in fact moving towards them, it's already far too late. Once a Kraken has grabbed a hold of a ship, it will not disengage until it has either been consumed whole or it has taken a substantial bite and disabled its prey. When the Kraken determines the ship will no longer be able to fight back, it takes on a much more ponderous nature with its meal, taking small bites here or there, often keeping the vessel tied up in its tendrils before floating off to a new hunting ground in search of more ships to ambush. It's not uncommon to see multiple wrecks tied up in the tentacles of a void kraken, meaning that if a particularly ballsy rogue trader was able to hunt and kill one, the opportunity for plunder might be incredibly lucrative. Not to mention, the kraken's body itself would fetch an absolutely ludicrous price tag from resource-rich entities or particularly eccentric collectors. Number 1. Corrupted void whales. Void whales have been in Warhammer for a very long time, but frustratingly enough, we've never really been given a good account of their lore. From what we can tell, they are absolutely massive behemoths that can reach sizes of well over 14 kilometers in length. And this is mostly judging by their model in the video game Battlefleet Gothic, which depicts them as larger than just about any ship you can field. The largest of which, outside of something like the Phalanx or a Star Fortress, is normally considered to be a Gloriana-class battlecruiser which can reach lengths of 14 kilometers. For the most part, they seem like gentle giants, only fighting to defend themselves when they are attacked or if the herd is threatened in any way. As long as you don't get in the way of their migration patterns, they are unlikely to attack ships they come into contact with. But unfortunately for these peaceful creatures, this wouldn't be the grimdark universe of Warhammer 40k if the writers didn't find a way to make them absolutely tragic. We have two notable examples of void whales showing up in the books, where they end up becoming mutated by the forces of the Immaterium, and their gentle nature is perverted into something truly horrific. The first of these examples comes from the 5th edition Space Wolf Codex, wherein a Space Wolf fleet encountered a mutant void whale in 877 M41 that had swelled within the warp and ripped its way back into our reality. The mutant was originally classified as a vast USM-class anomaly that had breached the yawning warp gate of Sloth. This thing was absolutely titanic and reached an astonishing 12,000 miles in length. And just to put into perspective how freakishly big that is, the Earth itself is only 7,917.5 miles across. It was an absolute behemoth of heaving, twisted, mutated flesh. The Space Wolves didn't know what they were looking at until a xenobiologist aboard one of their ships identified it as definitely having been a void whale, although one that seemingly had mutated quite considerably within the tides of the warp. The Space Wolves would end up setting off to slay the beast as it approached one of their astral strongholds, but unbeknownst to the boarding torpedoes that had been launched at this massive predator, it had grown so freakishly large that it had its own ecosystem, one that was incredibly hostile to foreign invaders. They were met with a host of Piscean remora, a vampiric species of warp-slicked bipeds, with sucker-like mouths and needled teeth. A gruesome battle took place within the void whale's innards, where the Space Wolves placed thermal charges deep within the creature's vital organs. They escaped with only seconds to spare, and the resulting explosion of tainted blood, viscera, and corrupted flesh gave birth to the Paralian gas belt. Whether or not this mutation was a once-in-a-millennia freak occurrence, or if it is something that is far more common than we realized within the void whale species, is yet unknown. And it's possible there could be even more warp-born void whales lurking out in the ether. The second mention of corrupted void whales comes from the very first novel within the Dark Imperium trilogy, where the forces of Nurgle had weaponized an entire herd by using their twisting plague magics to corrupt and mutate their ancient bodies into a sickening mockery of Imperial void ships. These were then used to ferry the demonic armies of Nurgle into Ultramar. This is a passage from the Dark Imperium which puts into perspective just how horrifying and disgusting this fleet was. In parody of the void ships of the Imperium, giant plague arcs came through the strange sky of the Garden of Nurgle. There were 7 of them all told, Nurgle's sacred number, sailing serenely towards Ajax, as stately as pleasure barks upon a perfect sea. They had been living things, and perhaps they lived still, held to a hideous existence by the will of the plague god, for they sang with awful sorrow, though their tails and flukes hung limply, and their bodies were decomposed as a corpse too long in the water. Their skin hung in great swags, from muscles writhing with frantic life. The blubber underneath had decayed into fur-like expanses, playing host to a multiplicity of parasites. Ribs the size of docking spars framed dark, stinking interiors. Open wounds dripped viscid matter, and slurry falls of rotten blood and excrement fell from orifices widened by the relentless efforts of the carrion eaters. Encircling these carcass ships were shifting black veils of flies by the billions, fat-bodied and voracious. Rot had made the creatures barely recognizable as void whales, dragged into the realm of chaos during the Noctis Eterna. They had been hollowed out by disease and infested with supernatural vermin until they were suitable to carry the legions of Nurgle. The first came to the rift, some way ahead of the others. The bony beak of its exposed jawbones pushed at the quivering meniscus, separating the material world from the realm of souls. An oil scum iridescence rippled out from the contact, stretching at first without giving, but Nurgle would not be denied, and the bone pierced the barrier with an audible wet tearing. The final barrier between the real and unreal penetrated. The carcass ship heaved like a rotting stillbirth, mobbed by its escort of flies. This entire scene was pretty gross, and I gotta admit, I feel pretty bad for the Void Whales. Hopefully we'll get a story that features them in the future where they're not getting corrupted and twisted into some kind of grotesque demonic abomination. And that was 5 crazy obscure aliens that don't get nearly enough attention. But now I want to hear from you. Which one of these was your favorite? Which one of them do you find the most horrifying? And most importantly, what are some other crazy obscure aliens, monsters, and demons from Warhammer that you'd love to hear me talk about? I tend to learn more about Warhammer through my comment section than just about anywhere else, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this subject, and maybe I'll include your suggestion in a future video. I love diving into the weird and unexplored side of 40k, so what are some topics that you think deserve to be covered but you've never seen a video on them before? And if you like content like this, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and ring the bell if you want to be the first notified when I post a new video. Big thanks to everybody who supports the work that I do, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.